that is using, like, fiddling with your timer when you're watering and things of that nature. I would advise against that if possible. Try to avoid fiddling with your timers. Just kind of leave those as set and forget as possible. Certainly check that they're functioning, but like try and leave those. Don't really fiddle with the manual setting, because a lot of times when people have a timer malfunction, it's more because they've left it on or they've left it off. So that's a really easy one to solve by just not fiddling with it. Try and get in there when the daylight would naturally be on or off, is the better way to go about it. If that isn't possible, then you might have to figure out some automation. So anyway, if you've had a problem, and say, we'll split this into two things. So if you have a problem in veg versus if you have a problem in flour, right? Because they're both sort of two different phases, and so you sort of would be advised to differently. So my way of looking at, if you have a light interruption in veg, right? Generally a bit more light is not an issue. So what I'll generally do is, as soon as I notice that it's been off, I'll turn it on and then put it to auto, so auto setting, and it will, obviously go through that light and then get to the next cycle. So the light will stay on longer than it normally would have, but then it will reset at the end of it. Now, if the same issue was to happen in flour, I would leave it off until the next time the cycle is going to repeat. So you would end up with more darkness than light. And it's really pretty simple, and that's that the floral hormones are diminished in the presence of more light. So that's where, if you've had a malfunction, a better way of resetting it is to err on the side of less light. It means you're sort of keeping those floral hormones built up rather than diminishing them. In veg, you're more trying to keep things into that long daylight period. So while it's pretty unnatural for it to have a really, really, really long day, that's going to create a more favourable scenario in trying to keep your plants in veg than, say, leaving them in the dark. So that's a really common one that people sort of come across. It's more common with mechanical timers than it is with something like your digital ones, because your digital ones are pretty rock solid. They'll stay locked to the clock. They have a battery backup, things like that. Not to say that the contacts can't stick in them and you sometimes have some problems, but generally digital ones are a lot more reliable than, in terms of keeping a regular interval, than what mechanical timers are. But yeah, to generally break that down, if you have a problem in veg, as soon as you notice it, just kick the lamp on, leave it on until the next time it's meant to cycle. If you have a problem in flour, as soon as you notice it, if it's off, leave it off until the next time it's meant to be on. If it's on, kick it off, leave it off until the next time it's meant to be on. And that is probably certainly what I've found to be a better way to go about trying to approach that. Just take a break and check in the thing today. We've got... Yeah. Actually, there's one from him. Yeah, it is. I've been robbed of an hour today because of daylight savings. Damn farmers. Yeah. But I'll get it back at the end of it, so it's all good. Coco Garden, how you going? Yes, nice one, Gary. Resist the sass, mate. The seed acquisition syndrome is real, but all your brothers and sister in here will support you in the struggle. J.R. Raddist. Dustin's going on, dude. Not doing burnouts on that forklift, are you, man? Auto. Maximum auto. And Jimbo, yes, that's a hot tip too, while we're still on the subject of timers, is have a backup timer. In the past, I've been known to piggyback timers. And so because it was more common years ago, it was kind of hard to buy good timers. It's not as common now because it's, the advances in everything. That's the way they go, right? But the biggest problem you normally have is that contacts will stick closed. Or, sometimes they'll stick open, but normally what happens is they stick closed because they weld together. It's just one of those things. And so piggybacking a timer would stop the lamp staying on, which would then interrupt the flowering cycle. And sometimes, depending how long it was between the last visit, that can be especially damaging. So yeah, you may not need to exactly piggyback your timers, but having a spare one on the shelf is a great idea. And I'm just going to say this, but program your timers when you're in a clear state of mind. All right. So if you've been, messing with some fungus, or you're especially laid back on this particular day, maybe wait until you're in a kind of freshly caffeinated, good night's sleep, clear state of mind before you go programming your timers, because I cannot tell you the amount of times I've seen people like program a weird interval halfway through the week on a, and all of a sudden their plants are like responding really strangely. It happens to all of us. We all are human, and so part of being human is making mistakes inevitably. So stoner proof that stuff. Your other self will thank yourself for having thought about that a bit more. Dozio, morning, dude. VB. Yep, so adding an hour, taking an hour away, accidentally plugging in. Here's what I like to do. Timers aren't that expensive, right? So I like to just have a veg timer programmed, and I put a big V on that with a nice permanent marker, or if I'm especially specky that week, I'll use a label maker. But a permanent marker works just fine. And same with your flowering timer. Put a big old F on that, or a big B on that, whatever you want to put on that. And then you only have to do it once. And you can just, instead of having to reprogram a timer each run, which is going to introduce the possibility of us screwing things up, you can just simply go boom and plug the other one in, and off you go. It might be a little bit maybe wasteful, but is it really, if it saves you some problems? Sorry, I'm just going to keep the music heading in a direction that I like today. Benny. Right, so that's kind of some of that sort of stuff. And if you're running autos, it probably doesn't matter, man. Just don't freak out about it. And if you're bringing plants from inside to outside, look, try and match your light cycle inside to what it already is outside, and that's half the battle. And then once you're there, then at a certain point you can try and acclimate things. But I mean, really, you've just kind of got to throw them into it, and they're going to respond how they're going to respond. So that's that one. I could probably go a lot more into that, but that'll probably do. Watering issues. That's another one. So we'll, again, split this into two little sub-parts. So, there's the, oh no, I have massively overwatered, or I've had a dripper malfunction, what have you. Now my plants are super wet. What do I do? And then there is the opposite of that, where it's like, oh no, they're way too dry, and this is equally as distressing. So don't freak out about it, because it is what it is, right? So too wet, you're going to notice your plants kind of, the leaves clawing under a bit, not looking real happy. Something that is really common with that as well, especially in soil, is that the plants will kind of look like they're starving. So it kind of presents like calcium, magnesium, lockout, nitrogen deficiency kind of stuff. But there's some other clues. So the burn back on the ends of the tips of the leaves, the kind of clawing under of the leaves, the just general, like, they look sad, they're not moving or praying towards the light. The calyx formation will slow down, all that sort of stuff, right? So chances are you've got enough food there. What's going on is that you kind of have compromised the oxygen saturation of your mix, and now you're dealing with a very wet soil scenario, which means the microbes can't breathe, which means everything else just kind of slows down to a crawl. So what do you do? What do you do? It's going to dry back as it's going to dry back, and so assuming your environment is on point, that's of course half the battle. So there's some things you can do with your environment to help influence that. You can drop your humidity by an extra 10%, which will of course increase the speed of your evaporation. You can turn up your fans a bit. All of that will help with evaporation. But what you can also do is you can try and actually wick out some of that water. So it's not always practical, and there's certain situations where just due to the size of the pots, or if you're in grow beds or something like that, you're just not going to be able to do that. But certainly in smaller pots, and even up to 40 litre ones, I find aren't really that hard to move. If you have that issue where they're too wet, you can basically get some of the really good brand of paper towel, make a thick wad of that, and then just simply put it under the pot and sit the plant on top of it, and that will wick out a significant amount of moisture. And you can repeat that process until the soil is more at a field capacity point. So as much as it'll hold without running off a bunch of extra. You can also look at pot stands. Pot stands will help get airflow around the pot, so you don't just have like a big flat spot on the bottom of your tent, say, with the pot sitting in contact with it where there's no... It can really only get air around the edge of that. Having that up on a little pot stand or pot feet or whatever you want to use, blocks of wood, will, yeah, obviously help with that. And then you can just sort of clean up the spill underneath. But yeah, you obviously want to avoid having standing water sitting around. It'll attract gnats. It's a vector for pathogens. It's obviously going to interfere with your environment. And if you're in mid to certainly late flower, you could have spoilage. So botrytis and things like that all happening. Callie, ITL. Yeah. So you can try and wick it out. You can modify your environment a bit so you get more evaporation. That's kind of what I would be looking at doing in a case of overwatering. I wouldn't necessarily pump light levels until you've kind of got things to the point where the plants are looking a bit happier, because obviously if you've got high light levels and a compromised root system, it can't really do as much as it would like to. So drop the humidity, increase airflow. You can even maybe bring your light down by a little bit. Let things stabilize a little bit, get some of that extra water out of there, and things should turn around. Now, it's like everything with soil and organics. You'll notice some things pretty quickly, but a lot of stuff is more gradual, and so the improvement will be a gradual improvement as they kind of come back online again. There's some stuff you can do to help. I find stuff like obviously lacto is very easy to brew. Things like dark matter, things like antimatter are great in that sort of recovery phase in terms of stuff we do, and mojo. That just basically pump your beneficials is going to help a lot as well. So helping the root system, which has been compromised, deal with its scenario that it's currently in, and then helping on the recovery of that, and then obviously stop it occurring again. So whatever it was that caused the issue in the first place, whether it was a dripper malfunction or whether it was just simply user error, so just doing too much yourself. We're creatures of habit, but don't keep hitting yourself. Just kind of modify that behavior to stop that happening. Nine times out of 10, overwatering is a habit-induced thing, and you can actually normally get away with a lot less, especially if you're swapping from, say, a drain-to-waste multi-bottle system where you're getting a lot of runoff. You'll probably find in soil that you're using a lot less, even when you're feeding rather intensively. So then on the other end of that, you've got, oh no, the timer malfunctioned or something happened. My person that was supposed to come and water my stuff for me did not. They slept in on a Sunday, and now I've got back from work and they're all dried out. What are you going to do? So in terms of soil, it's a little bit tricky because peat-based soils particularly, and the Island Blend is a little bit better at this, so that's where it's one of those ones that suits beginners quite well, because it takes a while to learn how to water. But peat-based soils are notoriously hydrophobic when they get very dry, and so hydrophobic means that they repel water. So you can get water into them, but you normally have to work the soil in such a way so the water's got to be kind of agitated through it. Not always possible to do, and it's certainly not possible to do when you've got plants in it in pots. If you're in fabric bags, when you get a large amount of dryback, the thing will shrink away from the edge of the pot as well, which makes the whole thing difficult to do. Krusty Crops and HBO Umbra, how you going, dude? Yeah, man. I was listening to Prince last night, so I figured to... So, gradual. You always want to be watering gradually anyway. You want to try and simulate rainfall. And the best rain in terms of soaking in and all the rest of it, if you've ever watched nature, is when it comes down just nice and slow and gradual. When you get big deluges, it just runs off everywhere. So that's your first clue. Apply it. You need to re-wet it gradually. Now, a trick that I like to do again, and it works better probably, it depends what you can lift. I can, 40-litre pots are not that much of an issue for me. I mean, I lug the 40-litre bags of dirt around all the time. But it depends on what you're comfortable lugging. But I find that actually fully submerging, so the way I like to do it is those big flexi tubs, the ones you can get that are like, say if I'm doing a 40-litre pot, I'll get the biggest flexi tub that I can from the feed store, and they're normally about 60 litres. And I'll mix up a significant quantity of some Green Supreme normally, because that'll help with the re-wetting. Put the plant in the flexi tub, and then I'll completely fill that flexi tub until it's over the pot level, the whole thing's submerged, and I will wait until the bubbles slow down. I don't want to leave it in there until the point where it drowns and is completely waterlogged. But what I'm trying to do is use all that air pressure and all the rest of it to kind of force water back into it again. And that oftentimes helps in kind of resetting that thing. So what works best normally, I find, is if you can kind of soak and then set them aside, stay on a stand so that you can drain off the excess, and then put them back into the tent/room/wherever you are. And hello over on what is it? Where are you watching from? On YouTube. What's going on? Get the chat going now then. I missed the intro thing today. I hit the wrong button. So yeah, smaller pots, things like that. And it's very, very common with mother plants because mother plants get neglected the most. They're just hanging around in limbo for so long that it's not uncommon for them to, go through various stages of over wet, over dry, that sort of thing. So if you can, certainly 5-gal pots are easy, 7-gal pots, 10-gal. If you can, submerging those is a great way to kind of try and reset that. Not always possible to do. Your pots might be too big, you might have a bed, in which case you will have to go the route of just trying to re-wet it slowly. So I've probably spoken about it before, many people do this, but I think one of the better ways to water soils is with a spray pack. So not the crop duster or an electrostatic sprayer, because they're designed to spray your leaves with, your canopy. But a pump pack garden sprayer, or you can get battery powered garden sprayers that are quite nifty. Those work terrific for just putting a nice soak, and you might have to soak a bit in and then come back, go and do something, come back, do a bit more, go and do something, come back. And you might even have to repeat this over the course of a couple of days until you actually kind of get it back to where it is good again. Mulching helps. But you'll be able to tell when you've got it back to good again, because it'll stop. It'll want to accept the water. at a certain point versus it won't want to just kind of pool up on top and then want to run off the edges. So you might put 3 litres of water on top, but if it just does that and then runs off down the sides, all that centre part of the pot is all dry. And dry soil is, you could effectively call it dead soil, because it's not able to do anything. Microbes need moisture to work. So submerge or gradually re-wet it. And there are things that you can add to your water, so wetting agents, very, very dilute organic dish soap can be sometimes suitable. Obviously, in our range, we have the Green Supreme, which has saponins in it. That sort of stuff. So you can add a product to reduce the surface tension of the water, which will help it run in more effectively as well. Especially effective on peat-based media. Because as much as peat's got a lot of things going for it in terms of the ability to host microbes, humic compounds, just generally a nice structure of the soil. Roots like it a lot. It's got other things that work against it in a lot of ways. And that is one of them, unfortunately. But then once you get it back to your happy moisture levels, keeping your watering back on point again. And also consider, I know we talk about it a lot, but consider mulching. It's a great way to keep the top of your soil from forming that crust, which then can make it hard to water or lead to a more systemic hydrophobicness situation going on. Phillips Lockie, Golden Gardens. And some of these tips are more... Craft Grow and Jared are more suitable to people that are obviously micro growing or growing for themselves, but that's the majority of our clientele anyway. And so yeah, if you're having really big problems on a large scale, you will have to get a bit more creative, I guess, or just put in some more legwork. Yep. Yes. Well, that's what happens. If the soil stays too dry too long, then you get that, oasis in the desert palm tree vibes thing going on. Right, yeah, so a little bit on watering, a little bit on light interruptions. And then there's, what do you want? You know, why? What do you want? Why are you that colour? Is it sulfur? Is it nitrogen? Is it boron? Should I start analysing colour and chasing individual trace minerals down the rabbit hole and applying singular things? And I really think that people overcomplicate the hell out of this. And there's colour charts online, which, I mean, look, if you know how to read them right, they're kind of okay. But at the same time, the plant varies so much in morphology and in colour and expression that a colour chart for nutrient deficiencies really isn't the most appropriate, because there's some plants that are a variety of colours just genetically. So that would be the first thing, is check that whatever is going on isn't just some genetic thing, because there's stuff like blueberry, which will, when perfectly healthy, growing perfectly happy, will have distorted, weird, strange shaped leaves. That is a thing. There's also varieties where they're just a variety of colours. They're colourful plants, you know, purple stems and stuff just naturally. So it might not be potassium deficiency. You might not all have these strange deficiencies going on. And in a soil where you've got everything there, and assuming it's moist, and it, you know, we obviously have our stuff analysed so that we know everything is in there, you'll find a lot of stuff is down to then the environment and genetic expression. So there's some plants that just suck. It is what it is. I know it's not a sexy answer, and we would love to think that everything we plant is going to come up roses. But, you know, it's the way it is, in that you, especially with the bottlenecking of things and the amount of strains that are interbred these days, you're going to have some ones in there that just suck. And they're going to have inefficient root systems, and they're going to be finicky, and they're just they're just those plants. That's their lot. Can't do much about that. Just got to ride that out. But if it's not genetic, then if it's not something that's genetic and it's not something that's environmental, I don't really like the idea of just trying to chase micronutrient deficiencies. It's something that you can do in hydro a little bit easier, and arguably you have to do more often because of weird lockouts and things like that. But before you go trying to just chase individual trace minerals or whatever like that, just consider giving things a general feed. So just a nice balanced fertilizer that's got, a variety, NPK, some trace minerals, some calcium, bit of magnesium in there and stuff like that. A balanced fertilizer, whatever that means to you. In our range, we have the Herb Superb Balance. We made that nice and easy. But just give things a feed, just a general feed. And you'll 9 out of 10 find that whatever the suspected single nutrient that you were trying to sort of nail down as being the overarching issue is, it was just in need of a general feed. So that would be, rather than trying to chase down singular things, in soil it's really quite easy. You can just do that. Now, if you have to start sort of chasing down, like, what is it, then some of the color charts and things like that can be helpful. If things are just yellowing out and they're not really doing much anymore, then a lot of the times it's calcium more so than it's nitrogen. But there's no, you can apply both at the same time, and arguably you should. So my sort of go-to with that kind of stuff is, if I need really quick results, I'll brew a nutrient tea with something. I'll use Herb Superb Balance most of the time and a bit of Stone Age in there, and brew that for about 12 hours with an airlift, and that'll provide some quick results. If it's something where I've just kind of noticed it, and that's kind of part of this stuff, is you've got to try and catch stuff early, because the turnaround in organics isn't always the quickest. But just simply top dressing is a great way to alleviate stuff. If you've got big plant, tiny pot scenario, and that's a lot of people, because not everyone knows to bank on the stretch. It's hard to kind of know that if you haven't done it, I guess. But a lot of people grow plants to the size that they think they'll need to be when they flower, and then they flip them. When in reality, in that first 2 to 3 weeks of the flowering cycle, they're going to stretch anywhere between 50 to 150% of the flipped height. So it will be significantly bigger at the end of stretch. And so rather than trying to grow a plant to the size where you think it'll need to be to fill the tent, and then deal with the stretch on top of that, while also dealing with a not optimal canopy to root space scenario, you can just veg them for shorter, flip them, and then you'll find that all of that will just get utilized a lot more efficiently. But yeah, I don't necessarily recommend trying to chase down just applying one thing. You'll normally do better just applying something balanced. You can make up your own stuff as individual things. Even something as simple as alfalfa meal is really quite a effective balanced fertilizer by itself. Fish meal, another one that's really quite effective and balanced just all by itself. So it's not to say that you have to use things like the Herb Superb Balance just because we call it that. But what I mean by that is just something that's got a general NPK profile that's not a massive spike of nitrogen or anything. It's just kind of 1-1-1 or 2-2-2 or something like that, pretty well flat across the board. That'll help. And yeah, Dr. Jimbo, mids is mids. You cannot make something what it isn't. If it is not funky, it is not funky. So yeah, rather than trying to drive yourself nuts trying to guess what the plant wants, it probably just wants just a general feed. It's probably been a while since it's had some home cooking, and so get that into it. apart from the teas and top dressings, the Aquamarine and Ocean Potion are also a fairly formidable top up. So, and do provide some really rapid turnaround. So they're also options that you can look at. Rightio, and then yeah, a little bit on the last bit of that is trying to stay ahead of stuff. So when you're top dressing, even teas, they take a couple of days to kick in. Top dressings take anywhere from 7 to 14 days to really get kicking and sort of deliver a significant payload. And so staying ahead of that. So rather than waiting until the plants are showing an obvious need for fertilizer, that's kind of like waiting until you're so hungry that you're delirious and then eating a bunch of food. You don't even digest things as well when you do that. And it's kind of similar with your plants. So rather than like waiting until they're sort of verging on deficient and then applying a heap of fertilizer and then kind of dealing with that, just even if they don't necessarily need it, you can still apply it. And you're not going to overdose anything, in contrast to if you were to do the same with a chemical salt sort of stuff. You've got to be really careful with that stuff because you'll overdose things. But it's difficult to do with, particularly with the herb superbs, and it's even really difficult to do with the Aquamarine and Ocean Potion. The dosages that we recommend are well below what we found the upper limit actually was. So in soil, if you're using Island Blend, anything like that, trying to stay ahead of stuff is really the way you want to do. You don't want to be sort of sprinting and stopping and then sprinting and stopping. You want to just be running a marathon at a nice pace the whole way through. One there for Jimbo. If you only have Mega Yield and Supergrass, you could effectively mix those two together and you would get something a bit more balanced, so you could even out the slight spike in nitrogen and the slight spike in P and K in the Mega Yield and the Supergrass by mixing them together. It wouldn't be the same as the balance, but it would still be a balanced fertilizer, if that makes sense. Canberra, how you going, dude? Rightio. So that's some common problems. If you have any more that you want us to go over, just inbox us and I'll get some other ones. But this was a suggestion from someone on the YouTube actually, which was it's a good one because I'd sometimes overlook this kind of stuff. And not everyone's actually had a timer malfunction or a pump malfunction or things like that before, so you might not know how to deal with it. Those are some ways that I would personally attack it. So I think we'll move into a bit of general questions and answers, hangouts, all that sort of stuff, and then I'll mosey on my Sunday. Go and hop, skip and jump. 2 pogo sticks and half a llama. Will be good. 3 yo-yos. Back. I think I'll queue up something from Lettuce. There was a suggestion from one of the boys down at SP in Canberra, which was Lettuce and their album Mount Crushmore, which is just a terrific name for an album. And I believe it was track 2, 116th Street, so we'll cue that up. I think that's something that Dr. Jimbo, Warrigange, Otto, Canberra, various people have discovered is just simply supplementing things. We can't always use as large of a pot of soil as we would like. And so, normally most people are doing some level of supplementation. So it's easy to get complacent with that sort of stuff. Not everyone keeps diaries or records or track, that sort of stuff. But yeah, keeping a regular scheduling on that sort of stuff is a great idea. You don't always necessarily have to wait until your plants are displaying an obvious need for fertilization, and you can argue that sometimes in organic soil waypoint is sort of verging on too late, because then by the time it actually kicks in and breaks down, the plants are really, really, really needing it. Actually, that's a good one. Dealing with pollen. But I mean, yeah, that's going to vary. Normally, the best thing to do is just to kind of mist everything down, because water will neutralize pollen. So obviously, not going to help if you have a hermaphroditic plant in the room just spewing more pollen everywhere. But yeah, that can be something you can do. Isolating the source of the issue and then removing it from you is not normally the best thing to do. Trying to press on with stuff like that normally doesn't go so well. How's everyone's outdoor going? I know that a few people are definitely getting some things going now. I've sent out a fair bit of Gorilla Soil to people, and a fair bit of Full Spec, and a fair bit of other stuff. Winged a couple of pallets out through the week to some stores, so should be hopefully keeping stock at most vendors and places. Doing our best to keep stock on the website. Yeah. A few people have got some crop dusters. Been showing me some pictures of those, spraying them around, making use of IP Monday and Foliar Friday. That's a lot of the time why I make silly days for things, is just a way of simplifying scheduling. It's if you make a silly little day for it, then it's easy to remember. It does sound completely stupid, but sometimes silly things are the things that actually work. They seem silly, but oftentimes things seem silly because they're simple. Simple things work. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are that way, Dr. Jimbo. It's a waste of all that sun. I say smite the sun. Put plants under it. Sun's trying to kill you with its solar rays and all that sort of stuff. You're gonna take that? You can really let the sun like show you who's boss. You can beat the sun. Put plants under it. Soak up its rays with chlorophyllic energy. More power. He definitely 2 scoops the aquamarine, this fella. More power doses all the way. Yeah, smite the sun. Put plants under it. $61 Falcon. A few people on this morning. Hey, Bill Superb Greens. What's going on, dude? That's cool. I'm not sure if everyone has a long weekend everywhere. We've got one out here. I'm doing my best to utilize some of it. I normally don't do that kind of stuff. But, yeah, sometimes I guess you've got to know the difference between sharpening a sword and just beating it with a mallet to the point where it's blunt and useless. So you need to recharge every so often as well, I guess. But a lot of cool stuff happening around. A lot of stuff that's soon with 2 O's, a lot of stuff that's soon with 5 O's, and some stuff that's just sun. Oh, sun. It's happening. That's the one. Right, yeah, this might be the ride out today, I do believe. Hello, other person there on the YouTube. How you going? If you're just tuning into, this is Lettuce. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a good. I mean, it depends where you're at. If you're struggling for water, it's going to be a tough season. But assuming you can keep water up to things, it's, I think, a terrific year to try and grow your own. The price of the extortive price of fruits and vegetables at the supermarket, with the duopoly we have going, quality-wise, cost-wise, even if it doesn't work out cheaper to grow your own fruits and vegetables, it certainly works out better quality with a whole lot less crap in the mix. And then you can just buy what you need from the supermarket rather than stuff that, you know, you can potentially just get for free by throwing a pot outside in the sun. Is that a chicken hunter? I'm going to send Buckethead after you, dude. He's protector of the chickens. Big Cooper and Tickle Toast. Yeah, local farmers markets. I rarely am up early enough or am free on a weekend to be able to actually go to them. I'd love a farmers market that sort of opens in the afternoon and runs into the evening. I've always thought that that would be a roaring success. But what do I know? I'm sure they're a roaring success anyway. But yeah, that's a great place to go, and it's also a great place to go and meet people that are likewise normally into the same stuff you're into. If you're into organic things or small batch things, that sort of stuff, creative people, weirdos, freaks, that sort of stuff, they can hang out at markets. It's a bit of a haunt for them. Oh, that'd be awesome, Jimbo. Yeah, see, they would understand it more up there. They would get their clientele. Around here, it's kind of like, well, if you don't get up at the crack of dawn on a Saturday and you don't make it, well, that's you don't get the good peppers, mate. Why it is. And, you know, and I get it. You know, not that we're people of leisure, but we're people that are busy. You know? So it's just kind of one of those things. That's normally what it is. Normally when I would have to get up before I went to bed to make it to the farmer's market and then make it into work. So it doesn't matter how good that kale is, it's hard to get it. Oh man, yeah, sorry, you got one over on the YouTube there. So Chicken Hunter is loving some of the stuff we make. Well, thank you very much, sir, and I appreciate you tuning in. So don't hurt the chickens. They're tiny dinosaurs, and they'll gang up on you eventually. You rest assured, the reckoning of the chickens will happen. Well, I mean, here's the thing: I just grow my vegetables in pots. So I've just got normally full spec soil. Some of it's Gorilla, some of it's like mixes of various. Lord knows what it is. Really, it's just like a whole bunch of different stuff, all jammed all together in there. But just in pots, you'll find that like really you can get free salad mix. I've got like perennial spinach and a variety of different things. And when I remember to water them, I normally have just free salad greens. So that's idyllic, really. Food for free. That's great. I'll take that. And even times where I'm like, oh, it looks a tiny bit sad. When I pick it and bring it in and clean it, it normally looks better than what I would have bought at the supermarket and brought home anyway. Like really, it's a lot of the time I feel like we're buying trash from those places. And that kind of just is the state of low competition and all the rest of it, I guess. But yeah, stuff that's easy to grow, you know, it's kind of, if you can do that, and you may need less to do that than what you would actually otherwise consider. Like asparagus, for instance, might take you a while to get going, but I mean, stuff like baby leaf spinach, god damn, you can probably crank that out in a month. I'm sure Bill's Superb Greens will be able to tell us all about that because that's what he does. It's his daily. Oh, yes. This is the Devlon Lamar Organ Trio. I love this dude. He shreds on Hammond organ, a long forgotten skill. So yeah, like anything, if it's not cheaper, it's certainly more convenient and better quality to just grow it yourself if you can, which is why I argue that you should be able to do that with a variety of things. And especially if you've got a demonstrated need for that, or even if you don't have a demonstrated need for that, I mean, you know, sometimes that's part of your thing. It's part of your expression. You need that in your life. You shouldn't be made to be dependent on somebody just because they're holding the keys. Let's not forget that whilst we are moving into an era of regulation and all that sort of stuff, this is a situation that was built and the framework was constructed and the genetics were held by you guys, the community. And so, you know, you kind of didn't need permission before. So, you know, not while I'm trying to agitate anything, but, you know, maybe look at that. No one's going to tap you on the shoulder and tell you that it's okay to be self-sufficient. You just kind of got to make that choice and just do that. And what that takes shape of in your life in a variety of things is really up to you and what your time permits and what you're okay with doing. But I say if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So don't be hoodwinked. The people at the top are not doing anything different to what you could do yourself. And arguably you could do better yourself. I mean, you know, there's people that'll argue that to death because millions and because lab coats and because this, that and the other. Really what a lot of that is obfuscation and justification of excess to create a dependent market. And if there's nothing to fear, then why would you worry? If it's really that much better, then why would you worry about some dude just doing it himself? Right? If you've really got the best kale, why should it matter if old mate can produce some kale in his yard? Yours is the best, right? You spent millions. That's why you're king kale. It gets peculiar when people are like, yeah, but if you let people grow their own kale, that kale might not be safe. And so it should not be allowed for them to grow their own kale. Same as a variety of other things in life, you know. Cloud Pen, or Cloud X Pen. Anyway. Cool. Well, we've nearly done an hour. And Close But No Cigar from Devlon Lamar Organ Trio. It's drawing to a close. So it looks like we're going to leave you with some Lude 4 by Lettuce. And I appreciate you showing up and letting me ramble and all that sort of stuff. These informal lives are, they're a bit of fun. I try and make them every week if I can. I don't always make it every week. I try and make it every week. But, you know, some weeks it's, yeah, might not look like it, but it takes a surprising amount of effort to do this sort of stuff. Rightio. Everybody have an awesome Sunday. I'm going to go and chill, do some other stuff. I'm going to put back up the picture again because, where is it? You get better every day. That's your Crocspiration. And we'll catch you later. Thank you very much, everyone.